She weighed almost nothing in his arms, just skin and bones and frozen tears. Marcus Reaper Kane, former Marine, Hell's Angel for 23 years, had faced down drug dealers and rival gangs without flinching. But holding this dying 8-year-old girl, feeling her small body shiver against his chest, broke something inside him that had been locked away for 48 years. Her parents had locked her outside in a blizzard, left her to freeze to death 20 feet from their warm house while they decorated their Christmas tree. And when Marcus found her, when he wrapped his leather jacket around her tiny shoulders, she whispered 4 words that would haunt him forever. "Are you an angel?"
Subscribe now and follow Sophie's story to the very end.
Comment your city below so I can see how far her journey reaches around the world. The wind howled like a wounded animal through the streets of Pinewood Falls, carrying with it snow so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in front of your face. It was the kind of winter storm that made smart people stay inside, hunker down by the fire, and wait it out, the kind of storm that killed. Marcus Reaper Kane wasn't smart. At least that's what everyone had told him for the better part of 48 years. He gunned his Harley through the blizzard, the engine roaring in defiance of the weather, his leather cut doing almost nothing to protect him from the biting cold. His brothers at the clubhouse had told him he was crazy for riding out in this.
Don't do this.
"Wait till morning," they'd said. "No run is worth dying for." But Marcus had never been good at listening, never been good at waiting. 23 years with the Hells Angels had taught him a lot of things, but patience wasn't one of them. He was 3 miles from the clubhouse when he heard it. At first, he thought it was the wind, just another trick of the storm playing with his ears. But then he heard it again, cutting through the roar of his engine and the howl of the blizzard. A scream, high-pitched, desperate, terrified. A child's scream. Marcus's blood ran cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. He killed the engine immediately, his boots hitting the snowy pavement as he dismounted. The scream came again, weaker this time, but definitely there. "Where are you?" he shouted into the storm, his voice barely carrying over the wind. Nothing. Marcus moved forward, squinting against the snow, following his instincts. He'd learned to trust those instincts in the Marines, back before the Hells Angels, back before the scars and the tattoos and the life that had broken him in 1,000 different ways. Then he saw her, a small figure huddled against the side of a house, pressed into the shallow alcove of a back door. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, wearing nothing but a thin nightgown, her bare feet already turning blue in the snow. "Jesus Christ," Marcus breathed. The girl's eyes found his, and Marcus saw something in them that made his chest ache. Not just fear, not just cold, but resignation, like she'd already accepted that she was going to die tonight. "Hey," Marcus said, keeping his voice as gentle as he could manage. It wasn't easy. His voice had been roughened by years of shouting orders, starting fights, and smoking too many cigarettes. "Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't respond. She just stared at him with those huge, haunted eyes, shivering so violently her whole body shook. Marcus shrugged off his leather jacket without thinking. The cold hit him like a sledgehammer, but he ignored it. He took a step closer, moving slowly, like she was a wild animal that might bolt. "I'm going to put this on you, okay? You're freezing." Still no response. Marcus crouched down and carefully draped his jacket over her tiny shoulders. It swallowed her whole, hanging down past her knees. Up close, he could see that her lips were blue, her fingernails were purple, and she was maybe 20 minutes from hypothermia. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked. The girl's mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. She tried again, her teeth chattering so hard Marcus could hear them click together. Sophie. Sophie. That's a beautiful name." Marcus looked around at the house behind her. The lights were all on inside. Through the window he could see people moving around. A Christmas tree in the living room, presents underneath it. "Sophie, do you live here?" Sophie nodded. "Why are you outside, sweetheart? It's freezing. Where are your parents?" Sophie's face crumpled. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, freezing on her skin almost immediately. "They locked me out," she whispered. "I was bad. Daddy said I was ruining Christmas. He said I had to learn." Marcus felt something dark and violent rise up in his chest. It was the old rage, the one that had gotten him into trouble more times than he could count, the one that had put 3 men in the hospital back in '98, the one that had nearly gotten him killed in Iraq. "Your daddy locked you outside?" Marcus's voice came out low and dangerous. "In a blizzard?" Sophie nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be bad. I just wanted to see what Santa was bringing. I came downstairs and Mommy was putting presents under the tree and she got me mad and Daddy got me mad and they said I ruined everything." Marcus stood up, his hands clenching into fists. He looked at the house again, at the warm lights, at the Christmas tree, at the goddamn presents underneath it. And somewhere in there, Sophie's parents were probably sipping hot cocoa, watching TV, convinced they were teaching their daughter some kind of lesson. They had no idea their daughter was dying 20 feet from their back door. Marcus looked down at Sophie again. She'd stopped crying now. Her shivering had decreased too, which was actually worse. That meant her body was starting to shut down. "Sophie, listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, crouching back down. "I need to get you warm, fast. Can you stand?" "I don't know. Let me help you." Marcus slid his arms under Sophie's small body and lifted her as gently as he could. She weighed almost nothing. How long had she been out here? How long had her parents left her to freeze? Sophie's head lolled against his chest and Marcus felt panic surge through him. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Don't go to sleep. You hear me? Stay awake." "I'm tired," Sophie mumbled. I know you are. But you gotta stay awake for me." Marcus carried her to his bike. He couldn't take her to a hospital, not yet. She'd never survived the ride in this weather. He needed to get her warm first, get her core temperature up. And he needed to do it now. He looked at the house one more time. Every instinct screamed at him to kick down that door, to drag Sophie's father out into the snow and show him what it felt like to freeze, to make him understand what he'd done. But Sophie didn't have time for Marcus's rage. "Hold on, sweetheart," Marcus said, settling Sophie in front of him on the bike, wrapping his arms around her to hold her in place. "We're going to get you warm, I promise." He kick-started the engine and roared back into the storm. The clubhouse was a low brick building on the edge of town, surrounded by motorcycles and pickup trucks. Marcus had called ahead, and by the time he pulled into the lot, the door was already open. His brothers were waiting. "Get inside," Tommy Chains Martinez barked, rushing forward. "Jesus, Reaper, is that a kid?" "Her name's Sophie," Marcus said, dismounting with Sophie still in his arms. "Parents locked her out in the blizzard. She's hypothermic." "Locked her out?" Chains's face darkened. "What kind of—" "Later. Get Doc. Now." Doc wasn't a real doctor. His name was David Morrison, and he'd been a combat medic in Vietnam before he'd patched for the club in '72. He was 68 years old now, half-deaf, and meaner than a snake, but he knew medicine better than most actual doctors Marcus had met. Doc was already moving, his medical kit in hand. "Bring her to the back room. We got blankets ready." The clubhouse had a small room in the back that they used for emergency medical situations. It wasn't much, just a cot, a space heater, and a table full of supplies that Doc kept meticulously organized. But it was warm, and right now, warm was all that mattered. Marcus laid Sophie gently on the cot. Doc immediately went to work, his gnarled hands moving with surprising speed and efficiency. "How long was she out there?" Doc asked, checking Sophie's pulse. "Don't know. Too long." Doc grunted, pulling out a thermometer. "She's conscious. That's good. But her core temp is way too low. We need to warm her slowly or we'll shock her system." He looked up at Marcus. "You did good bringing her here first. Hospital's 40 minutes away in this storm. She wouldn't have made it." Marcus stepped back, suddenly aware that his own hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage. Chains came up beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Who did this?" "Her parents." "Her parents locked their own kid outside, in a blizzard?" "That's what she said. She came downstairs to see the Christmas presents. They got mad. Decided to teach her a lesson by locking her out." Chains let out a long, low whistle. "That's not teaching a lesson. That's attempted murder." "I know. What are you going to do?" Marcus watched Doc work on Sophie, wrapping her in blankets, starting an IV to get fluids into her. The girl's eyes were closed now, but her breathing was steady. "I'm going to make sure this never happens again," Marcus said quietly. Sophie slept for 3 hours. By the time she woke up, her color had returned, and Doc had declared her out of immediate danger. She opened her eyes to find Marcus sitting in a chair beside her cot, watching her. "Hey, sweetheart," Marcus said softly. "How you feeling?" Sophie looked around the unfamiliar room, confusion clouding her features. "Where am I?" "Safe. You're safe. That's all that matters." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I want to go home." Marcus felt his chest tighten. After everything her parents had done, she still wanted to go home. That's what kids did. They loved their parents, even when their parents didn't deserve it. "Sophie, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay?" Sophie nodded slowly. "Has your daddy ever locked you out before?" Sophie looked down at her hands. "Sometimes. When I'm bad." "When you're bad," Marcus repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "What does that mean? What makes you bad?" "Lots of things. Being too loud, making a mess, asking too many questions." Sophie's voice got smaller. "Daddy says I'm difficult. Mommy says I'm exhausting." Marcus felt the rage building again. He forced it down. "Sophie, how long were you outside tonight before I found you?" "I don't know. It was still light when Daddy locked the door." It was nearly 9 p.m. now. The sun had set around 5 a.m. That meant Sophie had been outside for at least 4 hours. 4 hours in sub-zero temperatures, in a blizzard, in nothing but a nightgown. "Sophie, I need to know something else. Has your daddy ever hurt you? Hit you?" Sophie's silence was answer enough. "It's okay," Marcus said gently. "You're not in trouble. I just need to know the truth." "Sometimes he gets really mad," Sophie whispered. "When he's been drinking. He says things. And sometimes he—" She trailed off. "Sometimes he what, sweetheart?" "Sometimes he pushes me. Or grabs my arm really hard. He left bruises once, but Mommy put makeup on them before I went to school." Marcus stood up, needing to move, needing to channel the violence surging through his veins. He walked to the window and stared out at the snow, his hands clenched into fists. Behind him, he heard Doc clear his throat. "Reaper, need to talk to you. Outside." Marcus followed Doc into the hallway, closing the door behind them. "That girl's been abused," Doc said without preamble. "I did a full examination while she was sleeping. She's got old bruises, healed fractures in her left wrist, signs of malnutrition. This has been going on for a while." "How long?" "Months, maybe years. Hard to say." Marcus closed his eyes. "We need to call the cops." "Already did. They're on their way. But Reaper," Doc paused, "you need to prepare yourself. Cases like this, they don't always go the way they should." "What do you mean?" "I mean parents have rights, even shitty parents. Even if we report this, even if the cops investigate, there's no guarantee they'll take her out of that home. And if they do, she'll go into the system, foster care. And we both know how that usually turns out." Marcus did know. He'd grown up in foster care himself. 10 different homes in 12 years. Some were okay, most weren't. He still had scars from that life, the kind you couldn't see. "So what are you saying?" Marcus asked. "We do nothing?" "I'm saying we do what we can. We report it. We tell the truth. And then we pray that someone in the system actually gives a damn." The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both looking exhausted and annoyed at being called out on Christmas Eve in the middle of a blizzard. The male officer, whose name tag read Detective Harrison, took Marcus's statement while the female officer, Detective Chen, talked to Sophie. "So you found her outside her parents' house," Harrison said, scribbling in his notepad. "And she told you they locked her out." "That's right." "How long had she been out there?" "At least 4 hours. Maybe more." Harrison's eyebrows rose. 4 hours in this weather, that's attempted murder," Marcus finished. "Yeah, that's what it is." "Let's not jump to conclusions, Mr. Kane. We need to investigate." "What's there to investigate?" Marcus's voice rose. "I found an 8-year-old girl freezing to death outside her own house. Her parents locked her out because she wanted to see Christmas presents. She's got bruises, old fractures, signs of chronic abuse. What more do you need?" Harrison held up a placating hand. "I understand you're upset, but we need to follow procedure. We'll interview the parents, inspect the home, talk to Sophie again. Then we'll make a determination about next steps." "Next steps," Marcus repeated bitterly. "While you're making your determination, where does Sophie go?" Back to the house where her parents tried to kill her? We have protocols for situations like this. If we determine there's immediate danger, we'll place her in emergency foster care. But Mr. Kane, you need to understand, removing a child from their home is a serious decision. We can't do it lightly. Marcus stared at Harrison. The detective looked uncomfortable, but not enough. He'd probably worked a dozen cases like this, probably seen 100 abused kids, and he probably told himself he was doing the right thing by following protocol and respecting parents' rights. She almost died, Marcus said quietly. Another 20 minutes and she would have been dead. You understand that? I do, and we'll take that very seriously, I assure you. Detective Chen emerged from the back room, her face pale. We need to get her to a hospital for a full examination, and we need to interview the parents immediately. Harrison nodded. Agreed. I'll call for an ambulance. I'll take her, Marcus said. My bike. Sir, with all due respect, you've done enough. We'll take it from here. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to grab Sophie and run, take her somewhere her parents could never find her. But he'd been on the wrong side of the law enough times to know how this worked. If he interfered now, he'd only make things worse for Sophie. Can I at least say goodbye? He asked. Chen looked at Harrison, who nodded. Make it quick. Marcus went back into the room where Sophie was sitting up on the cot, wrapped in blankets. When she saw him, her face lit up. Marcus. She'd learned his name while they were waiting for the police, not Reaper. She'd refused to call him Reaper. That's a scary name, she'd said. I like Marcus better. Hey, sweetheart, listen, these nice police officers are going to take you to the hospital, okay? They're going to make sure you're all better. Sophie's face fell. You're not coming? I can't, but I'll come visit you as soon as they let me, I promise. No. Sophie's voice rose to a panicked pitch. No, please don't leave me. Please, Marcus. Don't let them take me back there. Please. She launched herself off the cot and wrapped her arms around Marcus's waist, clinging to him with surprising strength. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Sophie, he said gently, kneeling down to her level. Sophie, look at me. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I need you to be brave, okay? These officers are going to help you. They're going to make sure you're safe. But I can't come with you right now. You understand? But what if they send me back? What if Daddy gets mad again? Marcus put his hands on her small shoulders. I won't let that happen. You hear me? I will do everything in my power to make sure you never have to go back there. That's a promise. And I always keep my promises. You promise? Really promise? Really promise. Sophie threw her arms around his neck, hugging him so tight Marcus could barely breathe. Thank you for saving me, Marcus. You're the nicest person I've ever met. Marcus hugged her back, his eyes burning. You're welcome, sweetheart. You're welcome. Detective Chen gently pried Sophie away. Come on, honey. We need to get you to the hospital. Marcus watched them lead Sophie out of the clubhouse. She looked back at him twice, her eyes wide and frightened, and both times Marcus forced himself to smile, to look confident, to make her believe that everything was going to be okay. The door closed behind them. The room fell silent, and Marcus stood there in the middle of the clubhouse, surrounded by his brothers, feeling more helpless than he'd ever felt in his entire life. We're not done here, Chains said quietly behind him. You know that, right? Marcus turned to look at his friend. What do you mean? I mean, we don't just let this go. That girl trusted you. You made her a promise. The cops are handling it. The cops are going to do their investigation, fill out their paperwork, and maybe they'll do the right thing. But probably not. You know how this works, Reaper. You've seen it before. Marcus had seen it before. Too many times. Kids who slipped through the cracks. Families who looked good on paper but were rotting underneath. A system that was supposed to protect children but often failed them in the worst possible ways. What are you suggesting? Marcus asked. Chains looked around at the other brothers who'd gathered. Tommy, Doc, Snake, Bear, Tiny, Hooks. All of them nodded. We're suggesting we do what we do best, Chains said. We protect our own. And as of tonight, Sophie is one of ours. The Ashford family lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood with nice cars in the driveway and nice curtains in the windows. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Marcus sat on his bike across the street, watching the house. It was 2 a.m. now. The blizzard had finally stopped, leaving behind a world covered in pristine white snow. Everything looked clean, pure. It was all a lie. The lights inside the Ashford house were still on. Marcus could see movement through the windows. Sophie's parents were awake, probably talking to the police, giving their version of events, probably crying, playing the concerned parents, explaining that it was all a misunderstanding. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Chains. Cops just left. Both parents claimed Sophie locked herself out by accident. Said they didn't realize she was outside. Said she must have opened the door when they weren't looking. Marcus's jaw clenched. Of course that's what they'd said, and without proof to the contrary, it would be Sophie's word against theirs. An 8-year-old girl versus 2 respectable middle-class parents. Another text from Chains. Hospital finished examining Sophie. Confirmed the old injuries, but nothing they can definitively prove was abuse. Could have been accidents. Could have been normal childhood stuff. That's what the report says. Marcus wanted to throw his phone, wanted to kick something, wanted to storm into that perfect house with its perfect lawn and its perfect Christmas tree and tear it all down. But violence wouldn't help Sophie. He'd learned that lesson the hard way over the years. Violence felt good in the moment, but it didn't solve anything. It just made things worse. He needed to be smarter. His phone rang. Detective Chen. Mr. Kane, I wanted to update you on Sophie's situation. I'm listening. We've completed our preliminary investigation. Sophie will be staying at the hospital tonight for observation, but barring any complications, she'll be released tomorrow. Released where? A pause. Released to her parents. Marcus closed his eyes. You're sending her back. Mr. Kane, I understand your concern, but we don't have sufficient evidence of abuse to warrant removing Sophie from her home. The parents claim the door locked behind Sophie by accident. There's no proof it was intentional. She told me they locked her out. She told me it wasn't the first time. I know, but her parents deny it, and without corroborating evidence. Doc examined her. She's got old bruises, old fractures, which could have been caused by normal childhood activities. Kids fall, kids play rough, without a clear pattern of abuse, without witnesses, without documentation. We can't prove these injuries were inflicted intentionally. Marcus felt his control slipping. So you're just going to send her back to the people who left her to freeze to death. We're going to monitor the situation closely. We'll be making regular welfare checks, and if we see any signs of further abuse, we'll act immediately. She'll be dead before you act. Mr. Kane, how many kids have you sent back? How many times have you made welfare checks and told yourself everything was fine? How many dead kids does it take before the system actually does something? Mr. Kane, I understand you're upset, but this is how the process works. We can't remove children based on assumptions or accusations. We need evidence. I gave you evidence. You gave us a story, Sophie's story, which her parents contradict. I'm sorry, but legally, that's not enough. Marcus hung up. He sat on his bike, staring at the Ashford house, feeling the old rage building. The kind of rage that had gotten him kicked out of the Marines. The kind of rage that had put him in prison for 3 years back in his 20s. He'd worked so hard to control it, to be better, to be the kind of man who solved problems without violence. But right now, sitting here in the cold, thinking about Sophie's face when he'd found her, violence felt like the only answer that made sense. His phone rang again. This time it was Doc. Reaper, don't do anything stupid. How do you know what I'm thinking? Because I've known you for 15 years. I know exactly what you're thinking. And I'm telling you, don't. You storm in there, you hurt those people, you end up in jail. And then who helps Sophie? Nobody's helping Sophie now. That's not true. Listen to me. We've been making calls. Chains knows a lawyer. Used to patch for the club back in the day, went straight, got his degree. He owes us favors. He's willing to take Sophie's case. What case? The cops already said there's not enough evidence. Not a criminal case. A custody case. We can petition to have Sophie removed from her parents' care. We can argue that she's in danger, that the parents are unfit. It's a long shot, but it's something. How long will that take? Weeks. Maybe months. She doesn't have weeks. She doesn't have months. What happens the next time they lock her out? What happens the next time her dad's been drinking and decides to teach her a lesson? Doc was quiet for a moment. I don't have an answer for that, Reaper. But going over there and beating the shit out of her parents isn't the answer either. All that does is prove you're the dangerous one. All that does is give them ammunition to keep you away from Sophie. Marcus knew Doc was right. He hated it, but he knew it. So what do I do? Marcus asked. His voice came out broken. How do I help her? You wait. You let the lawyer do his job, and you stay close. You make it clear to the Ashfords that someone is watching, someone is paying attention. Sometimes that's enough to keep people in line. And if it's not? Then we deal with that when it happens. But Reaper, you made Sophie a promise. You promised you'd do everything in your power to keep her safe. Going to jail for assault doesn't keep that promise. You understand? Marcus understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I'll wait. Good. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start building a real case. Marcus hung up and took one last look at the Ashford house. A light went off upstairs, then another. The family settling in for the night, safe and warm, while Sophie lay in a hospital bed, terrified of what tomorrow would bring. Marcus started his bike and rode home, feeling like he'd failed Sophie already. The next 3 days were the longest of Marcus's life. The lawyer, Daniel Foster, started building a case. He interviewed Marcus, Doc, and everyone at the clubhouse who'd seen Sophie that night. He requested medical records. He filed petitions with family court. But it was all so slow, so bureaucratic, so goddamn useless. On December 27th, Sophie was released from the hospital, back to her parents, just like Detective Chen had said. Marcus wanted to be there when it happened, wanted to see Sophie's face, make sure she knew he hadn't forgotten about her. But the hospital wouldn't let him. Family only, they said, as if the Ashfords were actually family, as if they'd earned that title. Marcus spent that day at the clubhouse, pacing like a caged animal. Chains finally forced him to sit down and eat something. You're not doing her any good running yourself into the ground, Chains said. I'm not doing her any good at all, Marcus shot back. She's back in that house, with those people, and I'm sitting here eating a sandwich. Daniel's working on it. He's good, Reaper. He'll find something. What if he doesn't? What if there's nothing to find? Chains didn't have an answer for that. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He prayed. He wasn't a religious man. Hadn't been since he was a kid, sitting in a church pew next to his foster mother, listening to sermons about love and mercy while his foster father beat him at home. God hadn't helped him then. He'd stopped expecting God to help him since. But he prayed anyway. Not for himself. For Sophie. Please, he whispered into the darkness of his apartment. Please, if you're listening, keep her safe. Just keep her safe. No answer came. Marcus hadn't expected one. He was drifting off to sleep when his phone rang. He grabbed it, his heart racing. Unknown number. Hello, Marcus? A small, scared voice. Marcus, is that you? Sophie? Marcus sat up straight. Sophie, how are you calling me? Is everything okay? I found your number, in your jacket. You wrote it down, remember? Before the police took me. He did remember. He'd scribbled his number on a piece of paper and tucked it into the pocket of the leather jacket he'd given her. He'd hoped she'd find it, hoped she'd know she could call if she needed him. Sophie, are you okay? Are you safe? I don't know. Her voice was shaking. They're really mad, Marcus. They keep asking me questions about what I told the police, what I told you. Daddy says I made them look bad. He says when the police stop checking on us, I'm going to be in big trouble. Marcus was on his feet, already grabbing his keys. Sophie, listen to me. Where are your parents right now? Downstairs, watching TV. I'm supposed to be asleep, but I'm scared. I'm coming to get you. No, Marcus, you can't. They'll call the police. They'll say you're kidnapping me. She was right. If Marcus showed up at the Ashford house and tried to take Sophie, he'd be arrested. And then he really wouldn't be able to help her. Okay, you're right. But Sophie, I need you to listen carefully. If your parents hurt you, if they do anything to scare you, you call 911 immediately. You understand? You don't wait. You don't try to handle it yourself. You call for help. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe you. I promise they'll believe you. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The cops hadn't believed her the first time. Why would they believe her now? Marcus, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. I know you are. I wish you could come get me. I wish I could live with you instead. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Me too, Sophie, me too. They talked for a few more minutes, Marcus trying to be reassuring, trying to sound confident. But inside he was screaming. Inside he was tearing himself apart with the knowledge that Sophie was in danger, and he couldn't do a damn thing about it. When Sophie finally hung up, Marcus sat on his couch and put his head in his hands. He'd made her a promise. He'd sworn he would protect her. But he was failing, Every second she stayed in that house, he was failing. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but he knew who it was. "Thank you for talking to me. I feel a little better now. Good night, Marcus." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, "Good night, Sophie. I'm always here if you need me. Always." He didn't sleep at all that night. On December 28th, everything changed. Marcus was at the clubhouse when Daniel Foster called. The lawyer's voice was tight with excitement. "I found something. We need to meet, now." Marcus and Chains met Daniel at a diner on the edge of town. The lawyer looked like he hadn't slept either, his eyes red-rimmed, his suit rumpled. "What did you find?" Marcus asked without preamble. Daniel pulled out a folder. "I did some digging into the Ashfords' history. Turns out this isn't the first time they've had issues with child services." "What do you mean?" "Before Sophie, they had another daughter, Melissa. She was 6 years old when she died in 2016. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Died how? Official cause of death was listed as an accident. She fell down the stairs, hit her head. But here's the thing. There was an investigation. Multiple teachers had reported bruises on Melissa. A neighbor had called child services twice about hearing screaming from the house. But the investigation was closed. Insufficient evidence of abuse." "Jesus Christ," Chains breathed. "There's more," Daniel continued. "I talked to some people who knew the family back then. Melissa's teacher, some neighbors. They all said the same thing. Melissa was terrified of her parents, especially her father. And after she died, the Ashfords moved across town. New house, new neighborhood, new start. And then they adopted Sophie," Marcus said. "Exactly. 2 years after Melissa's death, they adopted Sophie from the foster system. A perfect grieving couple who'd lost their daughter tragically. The system probably saw them as ideal adoptive parents." Marcus slammed his fist on the table, making the coffee cups rattle. "They killed their first daughter, and the system gave them another one." "We can't prove they killed Melissa," Daniel said carefully. "But we can use this history to establish a pattern. We can argue that Sophie is in danger, that the Ashfords have a history of child welfare concerns. Combined with what happened on Christmas Eve, we might have enough for an emergency removal." "How long?" Marcus asked. "How long before we can get her out of there?" "I can file for an emergency custody hearing tomorrow. We might get a decision within a week." "A week?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "She could be dead in a week." "I know. But it's the best we can do legally." Marcus looked at Chains, then back at Daniel. "What if we don't do it legally?" "Reaper," Chains started. "No, hear me out. What if we just take her? What if we go to that house tonight, get Sophie and disappear? Take her somewhere safe until this all gets sorted out." Daniel shook his head. "That's kidnapping. You'd be fugitives. And even if you got away with it initially, eventually you'd be caught. And then Sophie would definitely go back to the Ashfords because there'd be no one left fighting for her. There has to be something we can do, some way to move faster." Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he said, "There might be one way. It's risky, and it requires Sophie's cooperation." "What is it?" "If Sophie could document the abuse herself, if she could record her parents threatening her, or better yet, record them actually hurting her, that would be immediate grounds for emergency removal. Undeniable proof." "You want an 8-year-old girl to spy on her parents?" Chains's voice was incredulous. "To provoke them into hurting her so she can record it?" "I'm not saying I want it. I'm saying it's an option. It's evidence that would force the system to act." Marcus thought about Sophie, about how scared she'd been on the phone, about how small and fragile she'd felt in his arms when he'd carried her to his bike. "No," he said. "I'm not putting her in that position. She's been through enough." "Then we file the emergency petition and hope the judge sees things our way," Daniel said. "But I need to be honest with you. It's a long shot. The Ashfords look good on paper. Stable home, decent income, no criminal records. The death of their first daughter was ruled an accident. Everything I've found is circumstantial." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we might lose, and if we lose, Sophie stays with them, and there's nothing more we can do." Marcus stood up, unable to sit still any longer. He walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot. All his life, he'd solved problems with his fists. Someone disrespected him, he fought them. Someone threatened him, he fought harder. It was simple, direct, effective. But he couldn't fight his way out of this. He couldn't punch a judge or intimidate child services or force the system to do the right thing, and it was killing him. "File the petition," Marcus said finally. "Do whatever you can legally, but in the meantime, I'm going to make sure the Ashfords know they're being watched." "What does that mean?" Daniel asked warily. "It means they're not going to hurt that girl again, not while I'm breathing." That night, Marcus went back to the Ashford house. But this time, he wasn't alone. Chains, Snake, Bear, Tiny, Hooks, half the club showed up. A dozen motorcycles parked along the street, engines rumbling, a clear message. We're watching. Marcus didn't approach the house, didn't knock on the door. Just sat on his bike across the street, arms crossed, staring at the windows. After about 20 minutes, the front door opened. Sophie's father, Marcus had learned his name was Richard, stepped out onto the porch. He was a tall man, well-built, the kind of guy who probably thought he was intimidating. He started to walk toward Marcus, but stopped when he saw the other bikers. 12 large men in leather cuts, all staring at him with expressions that could freeze hell. Richard stood on his porch for a long moment. Then he went back inside and closed the door. The lights in the house went off one by one. You think he got the message? Chains asked. Oh, he got it, Marcus said. They stayed there until midnight. Then Marcus left one of the prospects, a young kid named Jimmy who was eager to prove himself, to watch the house through the night. If anyone leaves, if you hear anything that sounds wrong, you call me immediately, Marcus instructed. I don't care what time it is. You got it, Reaper. Marcus rode home feeling slightly better. Not good, but better. At least Sophie would know people were watching. At least the Ashfords would think twice before doing anything stupid. At least, that's what he told himself. On December 29th, Daniel filed the emergency custody petition. The hearing was scheduled for January 3rd. 5 days. Sophie had to survive 5 more days. Marcus spent those days in a constant state of vigilance. He parked outside Sophie's school during the day, making sure she got in and out safely. He stationed brothers outside the Ashford house at night. He called Daniel twice a day for updates. On New Year's Eve, Sophie called him again. This time her voice was different, stronger. Marcus, I did something. What did you do, sweetheart? I recorded them. Daddy was yelling at me about the police and the investigation. He said when this was all over, he was going to make sure I never embarrassed him again, and Mommy said I should be grateful they adopted me, that I was nothing before them. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. You recorded this, on your phone? Yes, is that okay? I remembered what Mr. Foster said about needing proof, so I started recording when they got mad. Sophie, that's really brave. But I need you to be careful. If they find out you're recording them, they won't. I hide my phone under my shirt. They don't know. Okay, good. Can you send me the recording? Right now? Yes, right now. And Sophie, don't record anything else. It's too dangerous. We've got what we need. Sophie sent the audio file, and Marcus immediately forwarded it to Daniel. Then he called the lawyer, his hands shaking. Check your messages, now. Marcus listened to the recording while Daniel did the same. It was damning. Richard Ashford's voice, clear and unmistakable, threatening his daughter. His wife chiming in with emotional abuse that made Marcus want to reach through the phone and strangle them both. This is it, Daniel said, his voice tight with excitement. This is what we needed. I'm filing an amended emergency petition tonight. With this recording, I can argue immediate danger. We might be able to get Sophie removed as early as tomorrow. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. I'll call the judge's clerk first thing in the morning. This changes everything, Reaper. Marcus wanted to feel relief, but all he felt was dread. What if they hurt her tonight, before we can get her out? They won't. They don't know about the recording. They don't know we have this evidence. To them, everything is still going according to plan. But, Reaper, I know you're worried, but we're so close. One more night. Can you keep watch one more night? Marcus looked out his window at the darkness. I'll be there. I'll be there all night. Good. I'll call you in the morning. Marcus rode to the Ashford house. He called Chains and told him to bring backup. By midnight, there were 15 motorcycles parked on the street, a wall of leather and chrome protecting one little girl. Marcus didn't sleep. He just watched the house, his eyes never leaving Sophie's window, his phone in his hand in case she called. The night passed slowly. No lights came on, no sounds emerged. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. At 6 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. Daniel. I talked to the judge's clerk. We're getting an emergency hearing at 10 a.m. That's 4 hours from now. The judge listened to the recording. She's sympathetic. Reaper, I think we're going to win this. Marcus should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated. Instead, he felt a terrible sense of foreboding. Something's wrong, he said. What do you mean? I don't know, but something feels wrong. You're just tired. You've been up all night. Go get some coffee. I'll call you after the hearing. Marcus hung up. He stared at the house. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. At 6:30, a car pulled into the Ashford driveway, a black sedan with tinted windows. Marcus sat up straighter, his instincts screaming. Two men got out. They were wearing suits, but Marcus could tell they weren't cops. They moved wrong, too casual, too comfortable. They walked to the front door. It opened before they could knock. Richard Ashford let them in. Marcus's phone was in his hand immediately, calling Chains. "Get over here, now, something's happening." "What's happening?" "I don't know, but we need to move, now." 3 minutes later, Chains pulled up on his bike. Then Snake. Then Bear. Within 5 minutes, Marcus had 10 brothers with him, all watching the house. "What are we looking for?" Chains asked. "I don't know. But those men who went inside, they're not friends. I can tell." They waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then the front door opened. The two men came out. Between them was Sophie. She wasn't screaming, wasn't fighting. She just looked empty, defeated. Marcus was off his bike before he knew he was moving. "Hey," he shouted. "Hey, what's going on?" The men ignored him. They were walking Sophie toward their car. Marcus started running. He heard his brothers behind him, their boots pounding on the pavement. "Sophie," Marcus shouted. "Sophie, it's me." Sophie looked up. When she saw Marcus, something flickered in her eyes. Hope, fear, both. One of the men put his hand on Sophie's head, pushing her toward the car. That's when Marcus knew. These weren't social workers. These weren't cops. These were the kind of men Marcus used to work with. The kind who made problems disappear. "Stop." Marcus reached the car just as they were opening the back door. "You're not taking her." The first man turned, his hand moving inside his jacket. Marcus saw the bulge of a gun. "Back off," the man said. His voice was cold, professional. "This doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't. Sophie, come here." Sophie tried to move toward Marcus, but the second man grabbed her arm, holding her in place. That's when Marcus's brothers arrived. 10 large bikers surrounding the car, all of them looking dangerous, all of them ready to fight. The first man reassessed the situation. 2 against 10. He didn't like those odds. "We're leaving," he said. "With the girl. You can either let us, or we can make this difficult." "Who sent you?" Marcus demanded. "That's none of your concern." "The hell it isn't. You're taking a child. I want to know who authorized it." The man smiled. It was the coldest smile Marcus had ever seen. "The people who always win. Now step aside." Marcus looked at Sophie. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, her lips forming one word over and over. "Please." Marcus made a decision. It was probably the wrong one. It was definitely going to cause problems. He didn't care. "Get behind me, Sophie," he said. "Sir, you're interfering with—" "I don't give a damn what I'm interfering with. That girl stays here." The man's hand moved toward his gun. Marcus's brothers tensed, ready to fight. Everything hung on a knife's edge. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Detective Chen was walking up the driveway, her badge displayed prominently. Behind her was Detective Harrison. The two men with Sophie immediately let her go and stepped back, their professional masks slipping back into place. "Officers," the first man said smoothly. "We're just here to—" "I know who you are," Chen interrupted. "Private security. Let me guess. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford hired you to relocate Sophie before the custody hearing?" The man didn't confirm or deny it, but his silence was answer enough. Chen walked over to Sophie and knelt down. "Sophie, are you okay? Did these men hurt you?" Sophie shook her head, then ran to Marcus, throwing her arms around his waist. Marcus held her, glaring at the two men over her head. "Where were you taking her?" Chen asked. "That's confidential," the first man said. "Bullshit. You were either taking her out of state, or you were taking her somewhere her body wouldn't be found. Which was it?" The man's professional mask cracked slightly. "We don't have to answer your questions." "Actually, you do. You're attempting to interfere with a custody case. That's a crime. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where were you taking Sophie?" The man looked at his partner. Some silent communication passed between them. Then he said, "Out of state. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford have family in Montana. They were concerned about the custody hearing. They wanted Sophie somewhere safe." "Somewhere we couldn't find her," Chen corrected. "Somewhere they could disappear until this blew over." "That's speculation." "That's exactly what was happening." Chen stood up. "Here's what's going to happen now. You two are going to leave. You're going to report back to whoever hired you that the job is canceled. And if I see either of you near this girl again, I'm arresting you both. Clear?" The two men exchanged another look. Then, without a word, they got in their car and drove away. Chen turned to Marcus. "And you? What the hell were you doing? Protecting her? By starting a fight with armed men? You have any idea how badly that could have gone?" "Yeah, I do, but I made her a promise. I said I'd keep her safe, and I meant it." Chen looked at Sophie, still clinging to Marcus. Then she sighed. "The custody hearing is in 3 hours. Mr. Foster filed an amended petition last night with new evidence. The judge has already indicated she's inclined to grant emergency custody to the state pending a full investigation." Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. "She's getting out?" "She's getting out. But Marcus, you need to understand. She's going into the foster system, not with you." "Why not me?" "Because you're a Hell's Angel with a criminal record. The system doesn't place children with people like you. People like me saved her life. People like me are the only ones who gave a damn when her parents were killing her." Chen's expression softened. "I know. And for what it's worth, I think you'd be a great guardian for Sophie. But it's not my decision. It's the courts. And they have rules." Marcus looked down at Sophie. She was looking up at him with those huge eyes, full of trust and hope. "What if I fought for custody?" Marcus asked. "What if I went through all the proper channels, did everything by the book?" "Then you'd have a long fight ahead of you," Chen said honestly. "But maybe you'd have a chance." The custody hearing was brutal. The Ashfords brought their own lawyer, an expensive suit from a big firm, who painted them as loving parents being persecuted by an overzealous biker gang with a vendetta. Daniel played the recording Sophie had made. The courtroom fell silent as Richard Ashford's threats echoed through the chamber. "When this is over, you'll learn what real discipline means." The Ashfords' lawyer tried to claim it was taken out of context, that Richard had been understandably frustrated by the false accusations. Then Daniel brought up Melissa, their first daughter, the bruises, the reports, the accident that had killed her. The Ashfords' lawyer objected. "Your Honor, Melissa's death is not relevant to these proceedings." "I disagree," the judge said. "She was an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. It establishes a pattern. Continue, Mr. Foster." By the time Daniel finished presenting his case, the Ashfords looked exactly like what they were, abusers who'd gotten away with it once and had been trying to do it again. The judge took less than 5 minutes to deliberate. "I'm granting emergency custody to the state," she said. "Sophie will be placed in temporary foster care while a full investigation is conducted. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, you are hereby prohibited from any contact with Sophie pending the outcome of this investigation. If you violate this order, you will be arrested." She banged her gavel. It was over. Marcus waited outside the courtroom while they processed the paperwork. Sophie was somewhere inside, being interviewed by social workers, having her future decided by strangers. Daniel came out first. "We won." "I know, I was there." "She's going to a foster home tonight, the Hendersons. They're good people. I've worked with them before." "Good people." Marcus laughed bitterly. "That's what they probably said about the Ashfords, too. These are different, I promise. And Marcus, they're open to visitation." Marcus looked up. "What?" "I told them about you, about how you saved Sophie, about how attached she is to you. They're willing to let you visit. Supervised at first, but if things go well, you might be able to take her out, spend time with her." "Really? Really? But Marcus, you need to understand. The ultimate goal is to find Sophie a permanent home. These are foster parents. Temporary. If you want to be more than that, if you want actual custody, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to prove you can provide a stable home. And given your record, that's not going to be easy." "I'll do whatever it takes." "I know you will. That's why I'm already working on it." Daniel smiled. "First thing we need to do is get you off paper with the club. The court's not going to give custody to an active Hell's Angel. You'll need to show you've left that life behind." Marcus thought about his brothers, about the club that had been his family for 23 years, about the only place he'd ever truly belonged. Then he thought about Sophie's face when she'd hugged him, about her voice saying, "Thank you for saving me, Marcus." "I'll do it," he said. "I'll leave the club." "You sure? That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Sophie came out 20 minutes later, holding the hand of a social worker. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up. "Marcus!" She ran to him and Marcus caught her, lifting her off the ground and holding her tight. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" "They said I get to go to a new home, a nice home, with nice people." "I know, the Hendersons." I hear they're really great. Will you visit me? Every chance I get. I promise. Sophie pulled back and looked at him seriously. Marcus, are you going to be my dad now? Marcus felt his throat close up. I don't know, sweetheart. I want to be. But there's a lot of stuff that has to happen first. A lot of rules and meetings and boring adult stuff. But you'll try? You'll try to be my dad? Marcus looked into those hopeful eyes. He thought about all the reasons he shouldn't. His record, his history, the life he'd lived, all the ways he was completely unqualified to be anyone's father. Then he thought about Sophie freezing in the snow, about her parents trying to ship her out of state, about the system that had failed her over and over again. He thought about how desperately she needed someone to fight for her, someone to choose her, someone to love her unconditionally. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'll try. I promise I'll try. Sophie hugged him again, and this time Marcus felt tears on his face. The social worker cleared her throat gently. Sophie, we need to go now. The Hendersons are waiting. Sophie nodded but didn't let go of Marcus. Don't forget about me. Never. I could never forget about you. Promise. Promise. Sophie finally released him and took the social worker's hand. She looked back 3 times as they walked away, and each time Marcus waved, smiling even though his heart was breaking. When she was gone, Chains appeared beside him. You did good, brother. Doesn't feel like it. You saved her life. Twice. That's good in my book. Chains paused. I heard what you told Foster about leaving the club. Yeah. You sure about that? 23 years is a long time to walk away from. Marcus watched the door where Sophie had disappeared. She's worth it. She's worth more than anything else I've got. Chains was quiet for a moment. Then he held out his hand. Then I guess this is goodbye, at least officially. Marcus shook his hand. The club will always be family. But Sophie, she needs to be my priority now. I get it, and for what it's worth, I think you're going to be a hell of a dad. Marcus hoped he was right. The next 6 months were the hardest of Marcus's life. He left the Hells Angels officially, turned in his patch at a ceremony that left everyone in tears. His brothers understood, but it still hurt. It felt like cutting off a limb. He got a straight job working construction. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well and it was legal. He moved to a bigger apartment, one with a second bedroom in case things worked out with Sophie. He attended parenting classes, went to therapy to deal with his anger issues, submitted to drug tests and background checks and home inspections. And through it all, he visited Sophie every week. The Hendersons were good people, just like Daniel had promised. They let Marcus spend every Saturday with Sophie. At first, it was supervised visits at their house. But as the months went on, as Marcus proved he was serious, they let him take Sophie out. To the movies, to the park, to get ice cream. Sophie thrived. Away from her abusive parents, she blossomed. She laughed more, played more, started doing better in school. But she still asked the same question every time Marcus visited. When can I come live with you? And every time Marcus had to say, soon, I'm working on it. The Ashfords fought the custody case, of course. Their expensive lawyer filed appeal after appeal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recording, Melissa's history, Sophie's testimony. On June 15th, the court terminated the Ashfords' parental rights. They were also charged with child endangerment and criminal neglect. They'd spend the next few years in prison. But that didn't automatically mean Marcus could adopt Sophie. He still had to prove he was fit, still had to jump through 1,000 hoops. Daniel filed the adoption petition on June 20th. The hearing was scheduled for August 12th, Sophie's 9th birthday. The morning of the hearing, Marcus woke up before dawn. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, just paced around his apartment, going over everything in his head. What if the judge said no? What if they decided his past was too much? What if... His phone rang. Sophie. The Hendersons had gotten her a phone so she could call Marcus whenever she wanted. She used it every day. Marcus, it's my birthday. I know, sweetheart. Happy birthday. Are you nervous about the hearing? A little bit. Are you? Kind of. But Mrs. Henderson says it's going to be okay. She says the judge is going to say yes. I hope so. Marcus? Yeah? Even if the judge says no, you'll still visit me, right? You won't stop being my friend? Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. Sophie, no matter what happens today, I'm always going to be in your life. Always. That's a promise. Okay. I love you, Marcus. It was the first time she'd said it outright. Marcus had to sit down. I love you too, sweetheart, so much. The courtroom was packed. The Hendersons were there. Daniel, Detective Chen. Even some of Marcus's former brothers from the club there to show support. Sophie sat in the front row, wearing a new dress the Hendersons had bought her. She kept turning around to look at Marcus, giving him encouraging smiles. The judge was the same woman from the emergency custody hearing. She reviewed all the documents Daniel had submitted, Marcus's employment records, his therapy reports, his parenting class certificates, letters of recommendation from his employer, his landlord, even Detective Chen. Then she called Marcus to the stand. "Mr. Kane, you've had quite a journey over the past 6 months." "Yes, Your Honor." "You left the Hells Angels, got a legitimate job, completed parenting classes, underwent therapy. All of this to adopt Sophie." "Yes, ma'am." "Why? You've known this child for less than a year. You have no biological connection to her. Why go to all this effort?" Marcus looked at Sophie. She was watching him with those big eyes full of hope. "Because she needed someone," Marcus said simply. "And I needed her. I spent my whole life being angry, being violent, hurting people, and then I found Sophie freezing in the snow, and everything changed." He turned back to the judge. "She didn't see a criminal or a biker or all the terrible things I've done. She just saw someone who cared, someone who showed up. And, Your Honor, I want to keep showing up. For the rest of her life. I want to be the person she can count on. The person who will always choose her." Being a parent is difficult, Mr. Kane. It's not just about showing up. It's about sacrifice, consistency, putting someone else's needs above your own every single day. "I know, and I'm ready for that. More ready than I've ever been for anything." The judge looked at Sophie. "Sophie, would you come up here, please?" Sophie walked to the judge's bench, nervous but brave. "Sophie, do you want Mr. Kane to be your father?" "Yes, more than anything." "Why?" "Because he saved me, not just from the snow. He saved me from being scared all the time. He makes me feel safe, and he's the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered." The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I've been a family court judge for 25 years. I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of families, and I've learned that biology doesn't make a family. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up every day, even when it's hard." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Kane, I'm granting your petition. Sophie is hereby legally adopted by you, effective immediately. Congratulations. You're a father." The courtroom erupted. The Hendersons were crying. Marcus's brothers were cheering. Detective Chen was wiping her eyes, and Sophie was running toward Marcus, her arms outstretched, her face shining with pure joy. Marcus caught her and lifted her up, holding her tight, feeling like his heart might burst. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you, and I'm never letting go." "Dad," Sophie said, testing the word. "Dad." "Yeah, sweetheart, Dad." They held each other while everyone around them celebrated. And Marcus thought about the man he used to be, the Hells Angel, the criminal, the lost soul who'd spent 48 years searching for something he couldn't name. He'd finally found it. Not in violence, not in the club, not in any of the things he thought would fill the emptiness. He'd found it in a little girl who'd been locked outside in the snow, a little girl who'd needed someone to save her, who'd saved him right back. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "Thank you for choosing me." Sophie pulled back and looked at him, confused. "I didn't choose you. You chose me." "No, sweetheart. We chose each other. And that's what makes us family." Sophie smiled and hugged him again. And somewhere in heaven, Marcus liked to think, all the angels were smiling too. Because sometimes miracles happen. Sometimes broken people find each other. Sometimes the worst storms lead to the best destinations. And sometimes a Hell's Angel hears a cry in the snow and stops everything to become exactly what one little girl needed. A hero, a protector, a father, a family. 1 year later. Marcus stood in the doorway of Sophie's bedroom, watching her sleep. She was curled up under her blankets, her teddy bear, the one he'd bought her that first Christmas together, tucked under her arm. It still amazed him sometimes, the fact that this was his life now, that he had a daughter, that he got to be someone's dad. The past year had been incredible. Sophie had started therapy to deal with the trauma from the Ashfords. She had nightmares sometimes, moments of fear when she thought Marcus might send her away. But slowly, day by day, she was healing. They'd developed routines, pancake breakfasts on Sundays, movie nights on Fridays, homework at the kitchen table every evening, small, normal things that made up a life. Marcus had never been happier. "Dad?" Sophie's sleepy voice came from the bed. "Why are you staring at me?" Marcus smiled and walked into the room, sitting on the edge of her bed. Just making sure you're real. Still can't believe sometimes that I get to be your dad. Sophie sat up, rubbing her eyes. Are you happy? Being my dad? Happiest I've ever been in my entire life. Even though you had to leave your motorcycle club? Even though. Sophie, those guys will always be my brothers, but you're my daughter. There's no comparison. Sophie thought about that for a moment. Then she said, Dad, can I tell you something? Always. Sometimes I have dreams about that night, when you found me in the snow. And in the dreams you don't stop. You just ride past me and I freeze and die, and I wake up scared. Marcus felt his heart clench. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I wish I could make those dreams go away. It's okay. Because then I remember that you did stop. You did save me. And now I'm here and I'm safe and I have a dad who loves me. She paused. I think maybe the dreams will stop eventually. As long as I remember that you're real, that this is real. It's real, sweetheart. I promise. And I'm never going anywhere. Never. Sophie smiled and lay back down. Okay. Good night, Dad. Good night, Sophie. I love you. Love you too. Marcus turned off the light and went back to his own room. But sleep didn't come easily. He found himself thinking about that night 1.5 years ago. The blizzard. The cry he almost didn't hear. The split-second decision to stop. What if he hadn't stopped? What if he'd kept riding? Sophie would be dead, and Marcus would still be the same broken, angry man he'd been before. Living half a life. Going through the motions. Never knowing what he was missing. One decision. One moment. That's all it took to change everything. Marcus picked up his phone and scrolled to a photo. It was from Sophie's adoption day. The two of them outside the courthouse. Sophie in her new dress. Marcus in the only suit he owned. Both of them smiling so hard their faces hurt. Below the photo, Sophie had written a caption when she'd posted it to her little social media account. This is my dad. He saved my life. And then he saved it again by choosing me. I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Marcus stared at that caption for a long time. Then he set his phone down and finally fell asleep. Knowing that tomorrow he'd wake up as Sophie's father. And that was the greatest gift he'd ever received. If you or someone you know is experiencing child abuse, please call the National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4A-CHILD, 1-800-422-4453. Help is available 24/7. Sometimes the most unlikely people become heroes. Sometimes broken souls save each other. And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stop and listen to a cry in the snow.